Good morning. When Banquist hit the road, it always means an early morning for the cameramen. We got up at 5:45, had a McDonald's breakfast at 7, which is always a bit of a ropey way to start the day. And we're heading to Torquay, so about 15 minutes away now. And in Torquay, there's a stunning restaurant called The Elephant, and it's run by a fantastic chef. The chef's called Simon Hulstone. He's Michelin starred, and he's won almost every award there is going. He's National Chef of the Year, he won the Bocuse d'Or, he won the Rouge Scholarship, and he's really a treasure of British cooking. He's also a self-acclaimed champion of the English Riviera, cooking out of Torquay, using the produce and the seafood and the flora and fauna known of that area. They have a dedicated farm in Devon, and they rear and grow all the wonderful seasonal produce which is used in his menu. We're so excited to cook with him. His dishes are challenging in flavour and technique, and they really champion that local produce of the Devon area. Can't wait. It should be a good one.
Hello, I'm Simon Hulstone of the Michelin Starred Elephant restaurant here in Torquay. My food philosophy is very simple. We have a 96-acre farm, so we take the best from the land in season, the best from the sea, which is literally just outside our door, and we bring all that in and make it what we have here at the Elephant restaurant. So to start with, on our menu, we have roasted scallops, sweet salted toffee pea sauce with a Iberico lardo, followed by duckling roasted, comfy duck fat cooked carrot, Morcilla croquette, cavolo nero, and then a lovely unctuous chocolate and salted caramel dessert with praline creme diplomat. Here at Banquist, we provide the freshest, most seasonal ingredients for our menus. So we're providing you with some diver scallops. We're going to make a toffee pea sauce, which is really unusual sort of flavours to go with it. So we give us sweetness, fresh peas going in there, and then we're going to be finishing it with some fennel pollen. So fennel pollen is a lovely flower that comes off the top of the fennel, aniseed flavour to it. Lovage oil, so we make the lovage oil and we provide that for you. So wild celery is the best flavour for this. It's really, really strong in intense celery flavour, and it gives us really amazing flavour with the peas. Finishing it also is with some lardo iberico, so very thinly sliced marinated pork fat, and this is just going to melt over the top of the scallops. Following that, we've got duck, so we've got these fantastic creedy carver duck breasts that we use, heritage carrots, nice coloured baby carrots, normal carrots which we're going to confit and also make a puree out of, some cavolo nero, bang in season, and then we're going to make a little croquette out of this Morcilla sausage. So this is a Spanish black pudding, so we're going to be rolling that and making a nice crunchy croquette. Finishing it all with a nice aniseed honey-based duck sauce. And finally for dessert, we're going to go for chocolate. So we've prepared everything for you for this. So we've got an amazing rich chocolate mousse, a rich salted caramel sauce, a feuillatine chocolate crisp, so these have got praline through them, crunchy puff pastry, and then bound of chocolate, and finishing with a patisserie cream made with praline, and that's just going to sit on top. So a real marriage of flavours all going on here in a fantastic menu. So we'll be providing you with 95% of the ingredients. We're expecting you to have a few things in your pantry that you should always have: some salt, some sugar, pepper, butter, cooking oil, and then also we've just got a little bit of a penne mixture here for our croquettes, which is just 1 egg mixed together with a little bit of milk. Should be fine for 2, 4, 6 people. It's just enough just to dip your croquette into. Pots and pans wise, good selection here: frying pan, a few saucepans, 1 deeper pan, chopping board, a blender or a NutriBullet, hand blender, and a sieve. Okay, let's get on with the prep. Okay, so to prepare the duck breast, we just want to remove any of the ugly bits of fat that's hanging over the edges. We're going to take this down just with your knife, a really sharp knife. Then the tip of your knife, let's just go under there and tease that off. So we don't want to have any of that. This is all the silver skin where it's connected to the main carcass. But we're going to use this for our sauce, so nothing gets wasted. Most good kitchens won't waste anything. Everything gets utilised back into our sauce, full of flavour. And we're just trimming that duck around. Okay, so we've got this nice breast there now. We're going to leave them out of the fridge after this as well, so they just warm up, ready for the pan. So any bits of meat we're going to use, any large bits of fat we're going to discard because we don't want to use that for our sauce because it'll make it greasy. But we can use this to render down to make into duck fat, so this can go in with our duck fat for the carrots. So 2 different piles there. And then to go with our sauce, we're going to have the shallot. Nice piece of shallot there. I'm just going to use half of that one because it's a big shallot. And then we're going to use 1 clove of garlic. Taking the skin off. If we leave the skin on, it's going to make the sauce go bitter. So that all comes off. Shallot we just want to roughly chop. Because if it's too fine, it's going to burn. And again, that'll make our sauce bitter. And we're not blending this, we're going to be passing it out. So for our sauce, we've got that there. And then all we need to add to that when we get to a reduction stage is some star anise as well. And then we're going to deglaze the pan with honey and the alcohol and the stock base. So I'm just getting my pan nice and hot. Always get your pans hot because you don't want the things to boil in there. If it boils, all the water comes out. We don't want that. We want to get nice colour, we want to get nice flavour and a nice sear on it. I haven't put any oil in there because there's going to be lots of fat coming out from the duck skin and the little bit of fat that's on the meat. We want to keep that moving, get some colour going. Keep it moving off the bottom of the pan. This is all flavour on here, but also this will burn, again making your sauce bitter and past where you want it to be. Fat's rendering out, you can see how much fat comes out of the duck skin. Okay, so next I'm going to add my shallots, garlic and star anise. And we're going to use that to soak up all the fat that's in there. We're going to add just a little bit of cooking oil. Okay. Lovely. So getting those shallots cooked, browned, not black. We want to get them nicely sweated down. Touch more oil because it's going dry. All that oil's been soaked into the shallots, and the shallots are there to gather all that up. Getting a nice colour going now. Star anise smells coming through. Okay, we need to be a little bit quick on the next things. So we're going to add the honey. Pan's hot, so we've got to be careful, this will turn to caramel. And then we're going to add our Madeira. Step back from this one because you want to give it a little bit of a burn. There we go. So all that flavour's coming off the pan now. Reducing the Madeira and the honey down. So we flame off the Madeira just to cook off the alcohol. So that's down by half, and now we're going to add our red wine. And we want to take this red wine right down to a syrup. That's going to soak all that flavour in. And then finally we'll be adding our stock. But we've got to wait for our red wine to reduce down first. So your red wine reduction is almost down to a syrup. You see your shallots has all taken all that flavour in there, so all your flavour's gone back into the reduction. So now we're going to add the veal stock. So this is a 50% reduced veal stock, which True Foods make. So True Foods is a bit of a lifesaver for chefs now, because timing and making sauces is such a time-consuming idea that True Foods, who are chefs, have started making stocks ready to use, which is exactly the same as chefs would make. So it's a premium product. Loads and loads of Michelin starred chefs use this, and it makes our life so much easier. So stock's gone in there, and now I'm just going to let that simmer away until we get it to the consistency of the sauce. All I want to be careful of is that if there's any fat comes off, that I skim that off as I go along, so we don't have this nice greasy layer on the top. But at the moment this is fine. I just want this to simmer and reduce down. So I'm just going to leave that there. Don't let it boil, or the fat will go straight back into it. You'll have a cloudy sauce.
So quickly, how long?
Okay, so we're going to leave this to simmer now. It should take about 10-15 minutes whilst I prep the carrots for the main course. So now I'm going to prepare the carrots. We've got 3 different styles of carrots going on here. What we want really is we want one perfectly straight carrot. So that one's absolutely spot on for this one. So I'm going to peel that, and this is going to be for the confit. So just peeling it, making sure to take all the skin off. And then I'm going to leave the top on just so it keeps the same. And then we've got our duck fat. So I've got my duck fat here. I've also got the remainder of a duck skin. That's going in there because that's all part of it. I'm going to drop my carrot in, and I'm going to put the remaining pieces of star anise in there as well. So this is going to be our confit carrot. So I want to cook that on the stove, which I'll go over and do in a moment, but I'm going to get the other carrots ready as well. So the remaining carrots, again, we're going to peel, and we're going to finely chop these. These are going to be for our puree. You might find that there's going to be a few more carrots than you need, but it's quite hard to make a carrot puree because it doesn't have the density, the starch that when you make a potato puree or a parsnip puree, that it breaks down. Carrots don't break down as well. So it's easy to make a little bit more, and it blends a lot easier into itself. So taking the tops off of these ones. We want to cut these as fine as we can because we want it to cook as quick as we can. So I'm going to chop it in half and then thinly slice them down. And this will cook so much quicker. So this is just going to be cooked in a little bit of butter, some water, and I may add just a pinch of sugar depending on how sweet they are. And we're going to blend it all together, so for water, the butter, all the flavour is going to stay in there. So that's our carrot puree. So this is going to go into a pan, and I'm going to cover it with the water and the butter and let it cook down. So that's all going in there. It looks like a lot, but you really do need that much to be able to blend it. But the great thing about carrot puree is you can utilise it for other things afterwards. Loosen it down with a little bit of milk or cream. You've got a carrot soup. Carrot puree works on so many different options, and we haven't added anything more to it. So now we've got our heritage carrots, and these are going to be used as part of a garnish of a dish. So these are nice and small, so what I'm going to do with these, I've just washed them, make sure there's nothing on there ugly, any grit, and I'm just going to slice them a little bit thicker than the sliced carrots, and I want perfectly round discs. So these are the purple ones, and originally carrots were purple. Carrots only became orange I think it was in the late 17th century, and it was the Dutch who made them orange to celebrate special days, because that's their national colour. So that's where the orange carrots came from, but originally carrots were purple. We're keeping these separate till right at the end because they're going to cook so quickly. Okay, so that's our carrots. We're going to set those aside, and that'll be the last thing that we cook for this main course. So the sauce is now reduced, as you can see. It's gone down to this lovely dark looking jus. Nice glaze to it. Looks about perfect thickness for me. So I'm going to pass this now through a fine sieve into my serving pan. And if it does need a little bit more reducing, we can reduce that down now without all the other bits and pieces in. So pass it all through. I'm not going to push it through because I don't want to push any fat out from the meat or the duck skin, sorry. And I'm just going to let that drip through. And there's our sauce. Looking great. We want it so it's just thick enough to hold its own on the plate. So got a nice glaze there. Yeah, lovely and sweet. You can taste the star anise, the honey's in there. The red wine comes through really well. So that's your sauce done. We can leave that until we need it. So we're now onto our carrots. So we've got our carrot in the duck fat, the duck skin that we had left over, and the star anise. I'm going to bring this up to a simmer, and then we're going to take it off and just let it cook gently through. So I've got 2 burners on the go here. And then we've got our carrots that we've sliced down. We're going to add a couple of knobs of butter to that. And then we're going to just put about 3/4 cover in water. And we're just going to let that cook away. I'm going to possibly add a piece of cling film on there just to keep it going, but it's not necessary. All I want to do is cook these carrots. So don't worry about them overcooking. That's what you want. You want it to be soft and ready to puree. So the more cooked they are, the better. Whereas this carrot, you want it to be cooked nicely, taking all that flavour in from your star anise and duck fat, and then we just want it so it's soft enough that we can put a cocktail stick through it, and this is going to be our duck confit carrot.
So what's the heat that you're putting the confit on?
So I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and then we're just going to take it back and allow it to simmer. So your carrots here, these are going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook. Your duck, once it's started to get hot, you can see your fat start to boil. Remember, this is fat. So it's a deep fat fryer. So all we want to do is get to a nice temperature that we would say about 100 degrees. Be careful of the stove because it is fat. We don't want it to turn into a deep fat fryer and catch fire. So let's get it nicely bubbling, nice temperature to it. And this is going to take about 30 to 40 minutes just sitting there in its fat. Okay, so whilst your carrots are cooking, we're going to get the duck sealed off. We want to get the fat rendered down as much as we can. Quickly onto the flesh side, and then we're ready to flash it through the oven to finish it off and allow it to rest. So pan, again, getting it nice and hot. We're going to season the duck just on the flesh side because we're going skin side down, and into your pan. Be careful it doesn't spit. So your duck's in there. Listen to the sizzle, that's what you want to hear. That means the fat's starting to render. The duck starting to colour. It's a dry pan as well, as you noticed. There's so much fat in the skin that this is all going to come out, and that'll keep it moist. So I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure down on the duck breast. Just to get it colouring all over. Turning the pan down now. And I'm just going to let that seal away. Lovely. So we can cook it as much as we can on the fat because the fat's protecting the flesh, and also you're rendering it down, you're getting rid of all the nasty fat, and then you've just been left with this lovely crispy skin. And you can see all this is coming out of it, but also going back in to keep it moist. Okay, so once we've had a few minutes on the skin, I'm going to flip it over, flesh side, and not as harsh on this side because we want to protect the flesh whilst it's cooking. I like game, so duck is a great meat to cook. It's got so much flavour, but venison as well. Venison's a lovely piece of meat. No fat in the venison. So much you can do with all the other parts of the animal as well. Same with the duck. You got the legs to confit down, crispy duck tongues, things like that. So back onto the skin. Mise en place is key, so getting everything prepared. So your ducks are now sealed. I'm going to set this to the side whilst everything else is cooking, and then just before we need the main course, we're going to be cooking this, but we're all ready to go. So I'm now going to make the Morcilla croquette. So Morcilla is a Spanish black pudding, different to our black pudding in the sense that it's got paprika spices in there. Sometimes they use rice instead of the oatmeal that we do in the UK, but it's essentially a spiced black pudding. Lots of fat in there. Just taking the outer casing off, and then I'm going to break this down and just mush it up. So it looks a little bit more like a black chorizo, really, but it's raw or cured. I wouldn't recommend eating it as it is. We cook it, slice it, pan fry it. It's got a fantastic flavour to it, and just adds a different dimension to the berry black puddings or the puree, as they call it. So I'm going to just make some nice little balls of these. Not too big because we want to make sure it's cooked all the way through. So nice round ball. Forcing it with my hands. I'm wearing gloves for this just because it's so oily that I don't want my hands coloured for the rest of the meal and smelling like morphia for the rest of the week. So balls. This is going into our pane now. So a pane is the breadcrumb mix. So into flour, just giving it a quick roll off from there, getting the excess off. So there's our balls. Into our egg mix, so as for one egg and the milk just mixed together. So the egg sticks to the flour. Drain off what we've got there, then into our breadcrumbs. So we should be able to work with one hand wet, one hand dry, so we're not mixing it. So this is my wet hand. And then into the thing with my dry hand. So because we're going to deep fry this one, we want to make sure it's spot on, nice crisp to it as well. I'm going to do it again, but we miss the flour this time because there's the flour in the breadcrumbs. Into the egg wash, quick move around, back into your pane, dry hand, perfect. So now we have a double crumb, extra crunchy. And then we're going to deep fry these right at the last moment. Black pudding croquettes. So the prep's done, let's get cracking on with the starter. So I'm pretty boxed for the main course, so what we're going to do is go on to the starter now. So starter we can have pretty much ready to go as well. All we're going to be doing is finishing the last moment with our scallops. So for the starter we've got this amazing toffee pea sauce. So a couple of elements to this one, so we're going to make a caramel first. We're also going to be making a burnt butter, a burnt noisette. Then we're going to be adding everything to it, and then all these flavours are going to come back together, and we're going to blend it, and we get this amazing, sweet, salty, fresh flavoured pea sauce. So the toffee pea soup part of it is just, it sounds like a bit of a gimmick, but it's not. It really works super well. It's that salted caramel flavour that everybody's craving about, but put into a savoury environment. And it works so well with the sweetness of the scallops, this fennel pollen, and then the lardo and the crispy onions. So with our pea soup, we're going to have some sliced shallots and garlic, which we're going to add to our burnt noisette. So just getting those ready to go into our sauce mix. Okay, so we're going to have two things on the go at the same time here. A little bit of action going on in some ways. So I'm going to make a caramel first. So sugar into my pan. I'm going to add a little bit of water just to get it going. not too much because I want it to get caramelised quite quick. And in another pan, I'm going to make a beurre noisette. So I want to take this butter to a nut brown colour. Noisette meaning hazelnut, nuts. So beurre noisette, nut brown butter. Traditionally we add lemon juice to this, but we're not going to add that to it. We just want to get it to the nut brown colour. We're going to add the caramel. We're going to add the milk and the cream the cream to that. Then we're going to add it back to this. Then the peas and all the flavours are all going to be going all over the place, and we'll all be back to where we want to be. Just a simmer, really, yeah. So the caramel's starting to brown off now. My butter's, you can see, is foaming also. Caramel's looking good. Don't want it black. Last thing I want is a burnt sauce. Again, it'll go bitter. So, caramel's starting to get there. Beurre noisette. See how it's just catching. Beurre noisette, it's the solids of the butter are separating from the fat. So the solids are starting to reduce and colour. And then the clarified part comes to the top. So caramel's there, cream in. Be careful, because this is so hot now. So this is your toffee. Caramel, sugar, shallots and garlic into with my beurre noisette. Just simmering those through. This is now going to go into there. And then we're going to add our chicken stock to that. So all that sugar now dissolves. And we get this brown milkshakey flavour. So just going to see if you can see there's bits of caramel in there. We just want that to melt away. Just using it with a spoon. The shallots and garlic are in there for flavour, so it's get the savoury flavour into it. Okay, so now we're going to add half of our peas. We're only adding half because the peas will start to lose their colour. So when we add the next half is when we blend it. This will keep it a nicer green. So that's our pea sauce ready to go. All I need to do now is blend that, pass it with the other peas. So we've got our pea sauce ready to go. So we're going to put it into our blender. Be careful, it's very hot. Make sure we get all the peas in there. And we're going to blend that down to a smooth soup. Just get a cover. Right, as you can see, sauce has got a nice green colour to it, but what we want to do is we want to add our second lot of peas now to this to boost the colour up, just to intensify that pea flavour. Okay, so we're going to pass this through now. So you can use a hand blender for this as well. A hand blender will work just as well. I've just made a little bit more here, so use the normal blender. I'm going to pass that to get any of the bits of shallot, garlic, any remaining shell of the pea, and then we're going to pass that through a nice thin chinois, and that's our sauce ready to go. Just needs a little bit of seasoning. So I'm just pushing the sauce through the chinois to get rid of any sinew from the shallots, from the garlic and the pea shells, and any bits of caramel that hasn't dissolved. But we also want a really silky smooth puree, so it's a sauce that's ready to go. I'm going to leave a little bit of sludge in there. All the flavour that we've got is in the pan. So all I need to do to this now is season it to flavour and then reheat it for when we need it for the dish. Okay, so remember it's a salted toffee pea soup, so we want to be able to taste the salt over the toffee. So salt is a main factor there, so you've got the salty, sweet from the peas, and then you've got that lovely creamy toffiness coming through as well. It's like a nice pea fudge. So my carrots are now cooked, so as you can see the sliced carrots are really soft, they can be squished in my fingers. So I'm going to keep what's left of the butter, the juice in there. The confit carrot, as you can see, has changed its style a little bit. So to test this, I'm using a cocktail stick, just checking I can go all the way through it without it falling apart. It's still got a little bit of give, but that's what we want. We want to have a bit of al dente to it, but not raw. So I'm going to leave that in the fat until I need it, but I'm going to blend this one now. So everything in there together. But so into the blender, and I'm going to just puree that as much as I can. I'm going to have to keep scraping the sides down. To make sure we can get that carrot as smooth as we can. As you can see, overcooking it is the best option here to make sure that the puree's there. We will pass this as well because the carrot has got a little bit of liquid to it that we want to try and remove. So just a lower blend now. I'm just going to leave that to try and get as smooth as we can get it. So I'm going to pass this now, and I'm just going to leave it onto the stove just to try and dry it up a little bit, because like we said before, it doesn't soak up liquid as well as potatoes do, parsnips and other vegetables. Carrot is a lot rougher in texture, so it holds, it repels, should I say, any liquid that we've got. We just want to get that as smooth as we can and as dry as we can. So I'm going to let that liquid just pop out, and I'm going to dispose of that because we don't want that. And then push the puree through now. So the thicker puree coming through. So we're going proper chefy on this because I like my puree smooth, but as you can see, what I'm not passing is good enough as well. You know, it's all the flavours there, but I want a proper restaurant style puree. So I'm forcing it through the sieve to get out any sinew that we can get out of it. And I'm just going to put that back on the stove on a low heat and just try and evaporate any more liquid, but keeping it moving the whole time. Okay. So we're going to prep the scallops. So these are hand-dived scallops. Hand-dived, we sort of tend to use more than the dredged scallops, purely because of the quality of them, consistency. The hand-dived scallops we can get to the sizes that we want. So every scallop will come out the same. They're measured, and when we get them, they're absolutely spot on. And also hand-dived scallops tend to come in a whole shell, rather than the dredged scallops, which will be taken back to the factory, cut in half, the shells cleaned out, and any grit or sand removed. Whereas a hand-dived, the chef does all that work. There's a lot of work that goes into hand-dyed scallops. It's a very risky, dangerous job, but you know, chefs are very appreciative for it, and we pay accordingly for the best ingredients. So we're going to put the scallop dish together now. So we have our sauce all ready to go. Don't want this boiling, we just want this on a nice warmth. So we want to try and foam it slightly. So just keeping that warm. We've got our scallops. We've got some more peas that we're going to add to the sauce at the end. We've got our lovage oil. We've got our fennel pollen. We've got our crispy onions, and finally the lardo. So hot pan again, oil in, and we're going to put the scallops down into that pan. So this is my presentation side, so this is where I'm going to gain the most colour. So once it's in the pan, I season it. I don't want to season it too early because salt brings out the moisture and it will make the fish start to sweat and water will come out of it. The scallops cook pretty quick, so if we leave them out of our fridge before service, they'll get to a better temperature, so we won't need them as long. So, and also they really cook nicely, just a little bit translucent in the centre, so pink almost in some ways. So scallops are colouring up lovely. A touch more oil just to get it going. I'm not going to add any butter to this because I want to keep the sauce nice and clean, and the butter sometimes makes it just make it a little bit hessy, dirty. So scallops, flipping over. So that's about a minute to a minute and a half on one side, and the same again on the other side. So they're coming nice and plump now, all settling into it. Pan's staying at a nice temperature so the juices aren't coming out of the scallops. If the juices come out, they start to caramelise in the pan and make it a little bit burnt and bitter. You want to keep your scallops, again, nice and sweet. Seasoning on this side now. We can add a squirt of lemon juice to this if we want to, but for this dish, I'm not looking at doing anything like that. But it's always nice to add that lemon juice and a knob of butter just at the end if you're cooking scallops in a different way. So just feeling how firm they are. They've got a nice bounce to them, which feels like they're pretty much ready to go. And remember, all fish cooks residually, so once you take it out of the pan, the heat is still going through it. So you want it to cook just a little bit under where you want it to be, because these will carry on cooking. So scallops ready. So all ready to plate up now. So our scallops are cooked. We've got some extra peas, so these crispy shallots, lovage oil, the fennel pollen, the lardo, and our pea sauce. So we're going to put this all together. First of all, going to just give our pea sauce a quick whiz with a hand blender. And I want to add just a little bit of foam to it, but just to make it look a bit lighter really. So if it's not foaming up, just add a touch of butter or a little bit of milk, and then it's because of the temperature. If it's too hot, it won't foam. So we're now going to put this sauce into our bowl. So let's go with the sauce first, filling the base. Lovely flesh flavour to it. So cutting my scallops in half, as you can see, lovely and translucent in the centre there. And we're doing a whole scallop each. So we're going to place those on there. We're going to just drop a few of our peas into the sauce, not many, just so there's a little bit of texture in there. Nice pea sauce. Then we're going to put our lovage oil all over. So we want it to nicely split the sauce. Fantastic flavour on there. We're just going to sprinkle a little bit more salt onto our scallops, onto a cut side. Next up is we have our lardo. So thinly sliced lardo. Need to keep this in the fridge right till the last moment. And we're just going to place that over the top. Gives a lovely melt in the mouth flavour. Nice bit of fat to the dish. Fennel pollen. This is quite intense in flavour, so just the amount you see on there. And a bit of crunch now with some crispy shallots. So loads of different textures and flavours. Crunch, soft, lardo. And there we are, ready to go. I'm going to dribble a little bit more oil before we send it. So there we have it. Roasted scallops, salted toffee pea sauce, lardo iberico, fennel pollen and lovage oil. So your scallop dish is all ready to go, but before you eat it, let's get your oven on 180C or gas mark 3. And let me tell you a little bit about this wine that goes with your scallops. So the Banquist sommeliers go through an absolute mass amount of wines to match with all the menus that the chefs are cooking. And this one is a Trinity Hill from New Zealand, Hawke's Bay, which is actually a region that I've visited and possibly even been to this vineyard on a trip whilst living in New Zealand. This one has got a great floral smell to it as well. It's got lots of berry, not too strong in aftertaste. It comes through and it just sits there nicely. For me, that works perfectly with the flavours that I've got on the duck, the honey, the aniseed. This has got a nice bit of spice to it as well. Great match. Well, I hope you enjoyed doing the starter. Now let's pull this main course together. Okay, so the duck's going into the oven, skin side down, 180 degrees or gas mark 3, and we're looking about 8 to 10 minutes on there. Again, that's taking it to pink medium, so about 10 minutes. So we've got the oil in a pan, and we're going to be deep frying our croquettes. We want the oil to be about 180 to 185. It's hard to tell that without a thermometer, so we're just going to try and cook a little bit of crouton in there and just see how quickly it browns up. If it goes too quick, obviously our oil is way too hot. So we want to get these breadcrumbs from our croquettes nicely coloured. So this looks about right, really. Be very careful with this. It's a bit of a trick that I wouldn't like to be doing at home all the time. I tend to use a fryer as much as we can. But there we go, nice crouton. Any quicker than that, your oil's too hot, so turn the heat off and just let it sit on the side until it cools down a bit more, and just keep testing it with the bread. So our croquettes are going to go in there, so straight in, see how they're going. I'm just going to keep them moving because we haven't filled it with oil, because remember, oil expands, so if you put a lot of oil in your pan, it's going to boil over. So I'm just going to make sure there's just enough to 3/4 cover them and just keep them moving. Nice and golden brown, remember we want these. Nice crispy croquettes. So they're going to take about 3 to 4 minutes. And if they do brown up a little bit too quick, drop them in the oven for the last 4 minutes with the duck. And then you can cook them through that way. So all coming together nicely there, so lovely crunchy crouton. And because we've got the double layer as well, the Morcilla is not splitting out. So if it was splitting out, we'd have a crack in our croquette, but we've got this double layer of breadcrumbs, which adds that extra crunchiness to it, but also protects what's inside. So once our croquettes are cooked, we'll remove them, let them drain off. And if we do need to reheat them, we can just drop them straight back through the oven. Right, very carefully remove your oil. Remember, it's very, very hot, and just put it to a side and let it cool down. Next, we're going to bring a pan of water up to the boil, and this is going to be to cook our cavolo nero and our carrots. So water boiling, salt in there, get it nicely seasoned, and then our cavolo nero is going to go in. Doesn't take long. Try and keep the stalks from breaking, so a bit like spaghetti. let it go in and just push them down. They'll sit in there nicely. This is the last of the jobs now, so this is one of the last things that we need to be doing. So our sauce is warming up, our carrot puree is warming up, our duck is in the oven or now out of the oven and resting, our carrot confit is out of the oil, our croquettes are ready, and the last thing we need to cook is our individual carrots. So I'm going to drop these in the water with the cavolo. They're only going to take about a minute to cook as well in your salted water. We want to keep a little bit of crunch on them. You want a chinois ready, a sieve to pass off your water. Right, cavolo nero is now ready. Drain that off. You see the water's changing colour. That's the colour from the purple carrots coming out. So if you ever cook purple carrots and put them in your fridge, make sure they're separate from anything else because they'll turn everything purple. So just going to drain those off now. Back into the pan. And just going to add a little bit of butter because I want them nice and shiny. Okay, again draining that off. Now we're getting ready to plate. So we're just testing the duck now, it's nice and firm. Looking good there. And we're just going to let that rest for a few moments before we cut it. So we're now going to plate up our dish. So we've got our warm confit carrot, and it's half per person, so we're going to cut it straight down the middle there. So it's nice and bright orange. Just going to take a little trim off the back, just so it sits flat. Just to that. Perfect. And this is going to go onto our warm plates. And then couple of dots of carrot puree, so on top of that. This is where it goes a bit chefy. And our next dot of your carrot puree is going there. So this is where I work a bit. So let's put our carrots all different colours as we go, scaling on top. Alternating with different colours as we go, using that puree just to lift them off the plate. You can hide that as you go. So and we're working quite quick now because our food is hot. Then we have our croquette. We're going to sit on top of our puree, and then just after that we have our duck. So just going to trim a little bit of the edge off there, cut that through the middle, just so it sits. And our more cavolo nero sitting over the top of our duck. Onto our croquette. And then finally we're just going to add that lovely duck sauce that we made. Right there in the middle. So here we have it, roasted duck breast, duck confit carrot, Morcilla croquette, cavolo nero. So the showpiece now is the dessert. Let's get this done and finish the meal. So on to dessert. Really simple this for you, so we can either make it in advance or you can make it when you're ready. So we've got the chocolate mousse, really nice light chocolate mousse, salted caramel sauce, praline creme diplomat, and then we've got our little feuillatine chocolate discs. All in all, it tastes like the best chocolate Rolo there is. So let's go for it. Chocolate in first. We're just going to pipe a little bit in the bottom to start us off, and then alternating it with our caramel. I'm going to put the caramel just to the side there. Let's drop a disc on there. And then back in with our chocolate. Caramel in the centre. One more of our discs. Push it out so it gets to you the glass that you're going to use. We're using a martini glass here. Last bit of our caramel sauce. And then just popping it out, dropping it down, and then using a warm spoon, we're just going to drop praline creme diplomat on the top. So there we have it. Chocolate mousse, salted caramel, praline creme diplomat and crispy feuillatine. Well, I hope you enjoyed the experience of cooking along with me, and hopefully we'll be able to see you down here on the English Riviera so I can cook for you personally. Favourite restaurant would have to be Petrus back in the day. Fantastic meal, consistent all the way through. I think it's going to be probably a 40-odd course menu from Noma, so I can stay there as long as possible. I don't have an injury from the kitchen, but as an injury that I've got that makes it hard for me to work in the kitchen is I had a motorbike accident, scooter accident should I say, on my Lambretta, and I broke my hand, my fingers, all on this hand, and this finger went a bit dead and just flopped everywhere. And the option was to get it cut off, so it just wasn't a loose piece of skin. But for some bizarre reason, it's back to life, but it's swapped to the other hand, and I now can't bend the finger on the other hand exactly the same, which is really sad because this is my working hand. So I do everything with my right hand, and I can't do little things like hold knives. I can't use a cigarette lighter for when I light the stoves, and it's really hard to get money out of my pocket. Favourite flavour of crisp? Cool Original Doritos, every time. Rick Mail,